So for the first minute of this live, I'm just going to stare at the camera like this. Oh, Jesus Lord. How is everybody doing on this Tuesday? Okay, so today, I wanted to have a conversation about technology and how technology impacts, changes, betters not only the dissemination of information, but also education, and how we can use technology to create better educational spaces. You know, during COVID, when the schools were closed and so on, teachers started teaching via Zoom. And one of the complaints that I heard consistently, and I mean consistently, was the fact that A students became B students, B students became C students, and so on. Children just fell off. It may be one of the reasons why even now, when you can do face-to-face classes, face-to-face lessons, many parents are opting for that face-to-face time because they've had particular experiences with Zoom, and they've seen their children's performance plummet. But I would like to respectfully submit that has nothing to do with the technology. That has to do with the application of the technology. I think that you cannot do the way that you teach traditionally. You can't take that, you can't copy and paste that to how you teach using Zoom. I don't think it's a very effective thing. I think what happened a lot is that educators kind of basically copy and pasted that formula for teaching in person, and it didn't fit. It's like putting a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't work. And maybe that was also part of the learning process in terms of figuring out what worked via Zoom, what didn't work, what was effective and not effective. What I think was a little bit unfortunate post-COVID was that I think that particular bodies, particularly I guess the Ministry of Education, did not necessarily see the benefit in perhaps changing, the way that children are taught, and perhaps creating something that's more efficient, less costly. But that's maybe a conversation for a different day. Because I'm not trying to get political or anything here, you know what I mean? People get very emotional when they start talking about politics, so I'm good. No, thank you. Yeah. Recently, I was listening to a gentleman. His name is Jensen Huang. He is the CEO, owner of NVIDIA. He is basically at the center of anything connected to artificial intelligence. Very, very brilliant man. Very intelligent man. And he was talking about AI. And he was talking about demystifying the concept of AI. He says there's still a lot of I wouldn't say the word is ignorance, but people just don't know, or they're afraid, they don't want to learn, and there's sometimes this even paranoia, especially in the workspace, of people believing that very much so that AI is simply going to result in massive job losses. Give me a second here. That's just some ginger and lime water. Good stuff. good stuff to drink. Yeah. Oh, by the way, let me just encourage everybody who's scrolling through this live to stick around and also to share it with your, your friends on TikTok, particularly parents who have students who are in standards 3, 4, and 5. Soon that conversation will be changing as well because, we're going to move on to the next evolutionary step in terms of this business that we have here. But more of that later. Right? So he was talking about demystifying the concept of AI, and he simplified it to the concept of having a personal assistant. And one of the things, interestingly, that we try to use here is that, because this is the thing, these classes that we do are online classes, and therefore we try to take advantage of as much technology as possible to evolve the teaching experience and thus to evolve the learning experience of children. And also we want to introduce children to, because that's the thing, I don't think children can be ignorant of certain things, but then again, they're not really built that way. I remember my kids used to have this, it wasn't really my thing, they played, at the time, it was PS3, I think, at the time. And my son just had this agility for it. It's like, just like ingrained, just like, natural kind of thing. Me, I couldn't, ask from Elwood, I couldn't do I couldn't play those games. I just wasn't my kind of thing. But for him, it was just like, so automatic. And I'm sure many of you parents have experienced that too. I think we have the PS5 or something now, PS6. I don't know. I don't really follow those things, so I can't really tell you. And the truth is, the world they are going to live in is going to be a very, very different world. It's going to be totally different. Heck, within 5 years, this world is going to look very, very different. And then even when they are adults, so if that child is, let's say, between 10 and 12 now, in 10 years' time, in 15 years' time, the world is going to look very, very different. Extremely different. Recently, I saw that Elon Musk had rolled out some robots, and also as well a self-driving vehicle, which he said would be available in 2026, I think, for less than $30,000 US. I think the robots will be available as well for like $20,000 US, I think, in the same 2026. And I saw them speaking and interacting, and it literally looked, from the footage I saw, it literally looked like someone dressed up in almost like a Star Wars outfit and speaking through, that visor. That's how realistic the voice sounded and the interaction looked. But the world is changing. The world is changing. There's a concept called adapt or die. And, I'd rather adapt. And therefore, in terms of how we teach, in terms of what we expose children to, I think it's important to expose them to, applications of artificial intelligence. I think that's important. So what we try to do is we try to incorporate the usage of artificial intelligence into how we prepare our lesson plans, and how we disseminate that information. So we would use ChatGPT because that's an excellent prompt to get particular information, to get feedback from particular topics. There's also an application called AudioPen, that is actually great for transcribing, how do you say, word to text. I mean, there are a couple of them. There are quite a few of them. There's another one called Curipod as well. That is a useful tool. It's more created for the American system, but it is a very useful tool in terms of actually framing lessons, whether you're doing them with slides or otherwise, and then you can invite students now to kind of take a look at the slides as you kind of go through them. Yes? So I think it's important to create a different space for children. I think that's very, very important. I think that, because here is the interesting thing, right? As I said, the world is changing. And the things that we valued as adults, they just, some of them don't necessarily hold their value as much anymore. The new world is about skill sets. It's not really about degrees per se. It's more about what skill sets do you have. And when it comes even to AI, and let me go back to what I was talking about, even with people's trepidation about AI and how it will affect the workforce and labor. I heard Jensen Huang say something very interesting. He said that, he said two things actually, quite interesting. He said that more than likely, a person will lose their job to somebody who can use AI and use it efficiently. They won't lose their job to AI. They may lose their job to somebody who actually can use AI better than they can, and who has demystified it themselves, who understands it, and so on. He also talked about the fact, because he was asked a question about whether or not people should still learn to code. And he said that, sure, at this time, but down the road, the new coding language is going to be the human language, meaning that you'll be able to speak to an application, any type of application, and now you can say, okay, write me a program for this, and I think even now you can do that. Write me a program in C++, Python, whatever it is, and that application spits that out. So you don't necessarily have to learn a coding language. I think it's still useful now, though. And it's even something as well, even us here at KHOZA'S SCA Academy, it's something that we would want to explore, at least in terms of the downtime, like during the summer vacation. It's something that we would like to explore as well with kids to get them coding. Because we realize that there are certain skills that are not specifically taught in schools that can help children. If they get exposed to them, those things early on in life, it makes for easier adulting, for want of a better word. So things like coding, technology, AI, applications of AI. I would also talk about as well financial literacy. That's a thing that is a huge thing in terms of them understanding certain things. Obviously not going into great detail to confuse children, but at least to give them a sense of what that actually looks like. And again, outside of saving in a bank and buying insurance and so on, it's a much wider world than that. Because of the fact that since the advent of the internet, the world has not gotten bigger, it's gotten smaller. You can now, again, you can look at something on TikTok from somebody who lives in Thailand or, in South Africa, and you can interact with them and you can have a conversation on a daily basis, that kind of thing. So, that whole globalization thing, that whole thing of the world becoming smaller, becoming one village, is very much the space we live in now. So, I said something yesterday that I will continue to say, that we really do take the long view. We understand that parents obviously pay for their children to do well in their standards 3, 4, and 5. We understand that. We understand our responsibilities when it comes to teaching the syllabus, ensuring that children understand what is being taught, ensuring that they can ask questions, get proper feedback. But we also understand that we understand our responsibility, rather, to create great inputs for children, so that whatever we do or whatever our interactions with them, it positively affects their life, the span of their life, so that they can look back when they're 30 years old and say, hey, I remember when, I was in Sir's class and he said this to me, and wow, I still use that today. I think that those things are very important, and therefore this is why I think we are very cautious in terms of our approach and the things that we say, because and adults understand this. Sometimes the things that are said to us as children can stay with us for a lifetime, positive or negative. And I think that we want to kind of contribute positively to the experience of children, not negatively. I think there are enough negative things in the world. I think that, we want to really contribute to that positive side. So, coming back to, again, technology and applications of technology and even Zoom. It was during that time of COVID and hearing, getting this feedback from parents about their children doing poorly because, they could not interact with the teacher and, things were very different and so on. That, we had obviously to look at that, and even to look at our business model, because we offer only classes via Zoom, and see whether or not we were deficient in certain things, whether or not there was credibility to those statements, and if there was credibility, how then we could, turn certain things in our favor, so that the experience of using technology and even doing, for want of a better word, distance learning, online learning, how we can make it just as good or even better than in-person learning. And so we realized that there are certain things that must be done when you are doing online learning. And you need more checks and balances. You need more, for want of a better word, internal control. You need more controls so that you can ensure that children are actively participating. Children are actively participating in classes. One of the interesting things, though, is that I think whether you're doing it in person or online, you will always have students who may require more attention, require sometimes one-on-one. I think very much that is obviously for the parents to decide, and for the parents as well to assess, because parents know their child better than anyone else. I have known some children who they needed that one-on-one teaching. They needed that one-on-one space up to a certain point. They didn't necessarily need it for the whole period, but they needed it enough to get to the position where they could be focused enough. They could be focused enough, and their understanding as well, and their learning pace had increased. But sometimes children will need that one-on-one time. I think sometimes it is a necessity. It just is. And I understand the caution sometimes that parents take, because one-on-one, whether in person or online, can get expensive. But when you weigh what it'll cost, sometimes it's worth the cost. Because sometimes if you don't do it, children end up, in a particular school, in a particular position, where they honestly have to battle for 5 years. And that could have been avoided. And that's a tremendous cost to pay. In some cases, I think it's a tremendous cost to pay. So, our goal here at KHOZA'S SCA Academy is to use technology as much as possible, and even technology as it evolves as well. Because that's the interesting thing, even with business or any business, it doesn't matter. You can't stagnate. That's the thing. You have to constantly be evolving and be learning and learning. Reminds me again, interestingly, of the whole concept of AI and machine learning, and the fact that the rate at which that AI actually learns, and the fact that eventually, or even now, AI actually teaches AI. And the whole concept of how a system upgrades itself, it totally changes because of artificial intelligence. That's why I'm saying that, the world is, even now, it's very, very different. And in 5 to 10 years' time, it's, I think it'll only become unrecognizable if we choose to not change and adapt to what's happening. And because children are, again, children, they are the ones, I think, most of all, who have to be aware of those changes, because that really is the world that they are going to grow in. Because, again, as I said, in 10 years' time, average child who is a standard 3 to standard 5 will be somewhere in their very early 20s, so they're still quite young. In 20 years, I mean, I'll be 70, 71. So, I mean, so it's really, in terms of their kind, I'd be on the other spectrum, but they'll be, on the, So, I think, as I said, it's very important for them to be exposed to technology. And one of the interesting things that I find is that, because I was actually thinking about this the other day, right? Because we're having this conversation about remote learning and in person. And it's very interesting when these kids play games, video games, right? They are sometimes in a, let's say, a fantasy football league, or they are, again, I don't know much about video games. That's never been my thing, right? But sometimes they're in a fantasy football league, or they are in they're in a group playing some video game with somebody else who is not even located here on Trinidad, somewhere in the U.S., somewhere in Turkey, somewhere in whatever, right? And they are interacting with technology, all right? Some of that technology actually built by NVIDIA, because they're big in that video gaming world as well. And I mean, they excel at it in that sense. Understanding, yes, it's entertainment. But my point being that any technology can be misused, misunderstood, and sometimes does not produce the result for which it was made. Sometimes that happens. But that also is because of lack of knowledge and lack of experience. And in our case, in our situation, we have the experience in terms of using Zoom and other technologies. As I said, we use ChatGPT quite a bit. So we have that experience in terms of that to create, to create educational spaces that redound to the benefit of our student body. I think it's all about how you use the technology and understanding the human element and how to continue to engage children even whilst you're, again, doing this whole remote learning thing. I think that, as I said, you have to have certain clear parameters about how you're doing it. Because that's the thing, right? Even just operating off of self-interest. Even if we're just operating just off self-interest, right? We would want to be able to say, hey, we have a 90% pass rate or 95% pass rate or whatever the case would be. And to know that that's verifiable. Right? So that, again, it makes us more credible. And also increases business, right? So then it is also then even in our benefit to ensure that we understand the technologies that we are using. And we understand how the information is being disseminated and how it's being interpreted by our student body. So that, again, we can get them the result that we say that we can get them. And to be quite frank, so far so good. I wouldn't say 100% of our students pass for their first choice. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that. But I would say a significant percentage of them do. Definitely above 90% do pass for their first choice. Right? And that is not by guess. That is not by guess. I think if you ask any educator how they do what they do, even without them giving it away for free, they got to be able to say enough things to you to inspire some measure of confidence in and competence in what they do. And I think we inspire both. I think so. I think so. Give myself a pat on the back. I think that we do. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, as I said, I wanted to come here and address because it was something that I was actually thinking about, and then it's something that I've had conversations with parents about the whole idea of in-person versus online. And listen, I'm not trying to negate anybody's experience with online learning and maybe sometimes the dip in the performance of their children. I'm not trying to negate any of that. If that happened, I'm not going to tell you, well, no, that is untrue. No. Your experience is your experience. I'm just saying that for us here at KHOZA'S SEA Academy, we know what we're about, and we know the kind of results that we've gotten doing online education, and we understand how to do it properly. We understand that there's certain controls that must be there, certain accountabilities that must be there, certain feedback that is necessary to ensure that there is a full learning experience and that children actually, do better, that they grow in competence from standard 3 to 4 to 5. Yeah, so bringing some more ginger water here, sorry, with some lime. I like to do this a lot actually, ginger water. So I just grate the ginger like the night before, and I put some hot water in the ginger and leave it to sit for the night. And then I strain it and put it in some water. And I squeeze a lime in there. You can put a vitamin C in there if you want, you know. What else have I put inside there too? I like to squeeze citrus sometimes in water, like grapefruits, oranges. Throw in some blueberries in some water too, you know. I would drink plain water, but sometimes I just, yeah. Sometimes. I used to, probably about a year ago, maybe more than that. I used to, as soon as I got up, I used to drink a liter of water. Oh my God. Plain water. Tell you, that was horrible. Oh my gosh. Hey. Yeah, so as I said, I just thought I would come here and have that conversation about that because I know it's a concern for parents. And I understand that it's a valid concern, but I'm here to assure you all that we know what we're doing. Okay, so there you go. I hope that everyone has a pleasant day. Well, at least the rest of the day. It's nearly lunchtime, actually. Yes, so I think after I finish this live, I'm going to go and do some exercise. I think going to work out. All right, so bye for now.